On June 18th, 2002, a father's desperate search for his missing daughter began at the local community pool. At about 5:30 in the afternoon, he stumbled upon a sight that would, forever alter his life. As he lifted the tarp, he was met with a haunting reality. It was Ali. He called 911, and when the operator, her voice steady, asked what the emergency was, he replied that he thought his daughter had been murdered. You could just hear the panic gripping him. She pressed him, asking if it appeared that Ali was breathing. He said he couldn't tell, his voice just faltering as he cried out her name in anguish. The operator's voice cut through the chaos, telling him to stay with them. Later, he would say that there was a monster loose in their community and that they needed to get him off the streets. He said the man had started to fight with Ali. While you're settling in for the story, leave a comment. Where are you watching from? Your city, the time, and what the weather's like. And let me know what case you think I should cover next. What's the one that really grabs you? I read all your suggestions. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. It really helps keep these stories going. All right, settle in. Let's begin. So, this all happened back in the summer of 2002. 19-year-old Ali Kemp had just come home from college. Her family was living in the suburb of Leawood, which was known as one of Kansas's safest havens, the kind of place where doors were often left unlocked and the unthinkable rarely happened. This bright-eyed college student had taken a summer job as a lifeguard at the neighborhood pool, and she was working there alongside her brother. On that fateful day, June 18th, Ali was expected to be on duty, and her family was completely unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. The day was overcast and cool, so not exactly ideal for a pool outing. A witness remembered going to work and that Ali went to the pool later on. They got home around 5:20. At that same moment, Ali's brother Tyler was on the phone with their mother, not knowing the dread that was just ahead. Tyler shared that he had gone to the pool to relieve Ali from her shift, but he couldn't find her. Meanwhile, Roger Kemp, Ali's father, rushed over to the pool, anxiety just coursing through him as he searched for his daughter. When he got there, his heart sank when he saw Ali's car still parked in the lot. He later recounted how he looked everywhere, in the pool, in the deep end, checking the bottom. He looked all around the grounds, with this desperation just rising inside him. He searched tirelessly, moving over to the baby pool and peering behind it, but still found no trace of his daughter. He soon noticed Ali's belongings, all left untouched on the counter of her purse, her cell phone, and her car keys. It was all hinting at a mystery that really demanded answers. He remembered going into the pump room and that he couldn't see very well. He said he looked around and walked to the back of the room. He even looked behind the pumps. It was as he was walking out that he turned around and saw a leg sticking out from under a tarp. With trembling hands, he lifted it, revealing a horrifying sight. He said, with dread just consuming him, that it was Ali. He frantically reported to the 911-1 operator that his daughter wasn't moving and that she was lying there in the pool house. The operator, her tone calm but urgent, asked how old she was. He replied that she was 19, just completely overwhelmed. He just kept crying her name, "Oh, Ali, oh, Ali," as the weight of it all came crashing down. He pleaded for her to stay with him, just repeating that she wasn't moving. The horror of the moment really gripped him as he fought to maintain some hope. He begged her not to do it, his desperation so evident in his voice. The operator inquired again if it appeared that she was breathing. He replied that he couldn't tell, just lost in a fog of disbelief. In a state of shock, Roger was struggling to comprehend the nightmare that was unfolding in front of him. As he found her, he rolled her over, and the brutality of the scene just shattered his heart. First responders arrived to a chilling scene. The body of the 19-year-old lay naked on the cold concrete floor, clinging to a thread of life that was hanging by the most fragile thread. Ali was rushed to the hospital, her family gathering in a frantic race against time. Her father, just grief-stricken, lamented that Allie was the most beautiful, innocent, sweetest person, and that she did absolutely nothing to deserve this. Roger reflected on the day Allie was born, saying it was the happiest day of his life, a sort of bittersweet smile breaking through his sorrow. He described her as a wonderful daughter, so kind and so sweet. He said she adored her parents. The college student was really every parent's dream, kind and loving. He continued, with pride lacing his voice, that she had perfect grades and excelled in everything she tried. In high school, she was involved in nearly 19 student activities. She was in an honor society. She just had all these things going for her. He said they'd felt that way for years. And all this was happening as doctors fought desperately to save her life. It seems Allie Kemp was just determined to make a difference in this world. Meanwhile, at the crime scene, investigators were already on the hunt for a suspect, sifting through the chaos of the evidence left behind. The pump room was a scene of disarray, cluttered with all sorts of equipment scattered about. Allie's flip-flops, remnants of her last moments, lay in different corners, a haunting reminder of the struggle that had ensued. The scene was chilling. Blood splatter marked the struggle that had unfolded, a testament to Ollie's desperate fight against her assailant. She had numerous injuries on her fingers, and there was this haunting evidence of blunt force trauma that marred her face. In addition to that, the back of her head also bore the scars of violence. As investigators examined the bloodstains, questions started to loom. Was it solely the victim's blood, or could it also belong to her attacker? The DNA tests were going to give them the answer. And the results did confirm that the blood belonged to a male. So the investigators now held a potential led the DNA of the assailant. However, as they ran the profile through their database, that hope began to dwindle. So there were no matches to anyone with a criminal record. Really, their only option was to start seeking out potential witnesses. Meanwhile, over at the hospital, Roger Kemp was anxiously pacing outside the operating room, just grappling with this uncertainty over his daughter's fate. Friends, family, and concerned citizens, they all flooded the hospital, their collective hope hanging by a thread. They were all just clinging to the belief that Allie might somehow survive. But when a doctor and a nurse finally came out, their expressions, they told a grim story. Despite their relentless efforts, the unthinkable was confirmed. Allie Kemp had succumbed to her injuries on June 18th, 2002. The world just felt unbearably heavy as they moved from the hospital to the funeral home, where Allie was taken to the morgue. Roger, he refused to let her be alone. He spent the night there, just a devoted father, unwilling to abandon his daughter even in her darkest hour. News of the tragedy spread like wildfire through the community, leaving everyone in complete shock. The entrance to the Foxborough Pool became this somber gathering place filled with friends and neighbors all paying their respects. Flowers and mementos adorned the area, honoring a young life that was extinguished far too soon. As reporters covered the story, the crowd just continued to swell, and every single person was hoping for justice. A mother of two expressed her anguish, and it really revealed the universal fear that had gripped the community. The question just seemed to echo in the air: how could a monster like that exist among them? Roger Kemp, faced with unimaginable grief, had a look on his face that spoke volumes. His face was a portrait of pain, reflecting the torment of a father grappling with the loss of his beloved daughter. Each day felt like an endless nightmare to him, filled with questions that just haunted him, and, a mother's anguish. It's just so difficult to articulate. Allie was beloved, and her vibrant spirit was known throughout the whole community. The news of her death sent shockwaves, leaving so many in disbelief. A monster was loose, and the urgency to capture him just intensified. When I first encountered Roger Kemp, his face was just etched with sorrow. Those initial days, for him, felt like an endless nightmare, with questions just racing through his mind. Who could have committed such a heinous act? How could this happen? The search for the predator weighed heavily on him. Faced with despair, he had to contemplate his choices. He could either hide away, or he could confront this darkness head on. Determined, he chose action. He said, with this fierce resolve, that while Allie had fought for her life, he would now fight for her justice. Roger Kemp emerged as this truly remarkable father, driven by an unwavering quest to uncover the truth behind his daughter's tragic fate. He transformed into a warrior, really, a champion for Ali, tirelessly making public appearances to raise awareness. As the investigation shifted gears from an assault to a violent murder, the detectives intensified their efforts. They had to eliminate the suspects who were closest to Ali to narrow down their search. You know, in cases like this, it's essential to clear family, close friends, and boyfriends from suspicion immediately, and at the top of this list was Allie's boyfriend, Phil. When they analyzed her cell phone records, police discovered that Allie had reached out to Phil at 2:50 p.m., mere hours before her body was discovered. It turned out that Phil, her devoted boyfriend of 5 years, had also been working at that same pool and had actually covered the shift right before Ali's. During questioning, the young man appeared visibly shaken, but he was willing to cooperate. He was, after all, the last person known to have seen Ali alive. In the interview, he recounted how he had gone to another pool after they parted ways. Phil willingly provided his DNA when they asked for it, and he was clearly just engulfed in grief and disbelief over the whole situation. He expressed how profoundly difficult it was for him to come to terms with her tragic fate. Friends and family would all attest that Phil was a genuinely good person, a sentiment that even Roger echoed. When they asked him about any possibility of his involvement, he vehemently denied it, saying there was just no way. At only 19 years old, their 5-year relationship had been filled with love. After conducting DNA tests, authorities confirmed that Ali's boyfriend was not a match. He had also validated his alibi, proving he was in fact at another pool during the time of the murder. However, while Phil was cleared of suspicion, he provided investigators with some critical insights. He revealed that Ali had confided in him about her fears of being stalked, expressing her concern that she was being watched when she was alone. She had told Phil about her discomfort with the workers who mowed the grass and tended to the garden, claiming their lingering gazes just made her feel uneasy. On one occasion, she had even asked Phil to stay longer at the pool while those workers were present, just seeking some comfort in his company. Eventually, around 2:15 p.m., she had reassured him that it was safe for him to leave, as the workers had departed. So, when police interviewed the 2 lawn care workers who had been on site that day, they uncovered some alarming information. They said a tan 1980s Ford pickup had circled the parking lot multiple times before speeding away. But that wasn't the only eerie detail. Just the day before the attack, the workers reported having seen a man lurking near the pool. In fact, 3 witnesses described him as hiding in the bushes, armed with a camera, and seemingly fixated on the girls who were present that day. As the investigation into the tragic death of the young lifeguard began to unravel, police made what they felt was their most significant breakthrough yet. One of the calls Ali had placed that day was to a friend, requesting her company at the pool because she was alone. Witnesses began to surface, recounting what they'd observed. 3 individuals reported seeing a man lurking around the pool, in the bushes, armed with a camera, who seemed to be fixated on the young women present. As the investigation deepened, police uncovered a significant lead. One of the calls made by the young lifeguard that fateful day was to a friend, asking for her company at the pool since she found herself alone. It became apparent that this friend may have unwittingly crossed paths with the killer. At precisely 3:15, her friend arrived at the pool. A little hesitant to leave her car, she honked the horn, hoping to summon Ali from the attendance table inside. As she scanned the area, she noticed a male figure standing nearby, but he was unfamiliar to her. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly beginning to align, yet the mystery remained shrouded in darkness. Witnesses described the man as a white male, likely in his 30s, with thinning hair that suggested he was balding. He carried a pail and greeted her with a nod and a wave. Well, fear just gripped her heart because she was afraid he might be Allie's boss. Concerned about the potential trouble she could cause for Allie by honking the horn, she quickly left the scene. So, the friend was soon brought down to the police station to meet with a sketch artist. The resulting image was sent out to every news outlet in the city, with everyone hoping for a lead. And alongside the description of a Ford pickup truck, the grim news of Ollie's brutal murder began to surface. The detectives were adamant. They said they would identify the person responsible, and they had over 20 Metro Squad detectives working the case. However, there was still this uncertainty looming. Authorities just couldn't confirm whether the man who was spotted in the bushes was the same individual who was seen at the pool on the day of the murder. Armed with over 1,000 copies of the police-released sketch, Allie Kemp's friends dedicated hours to posting them all around town. The hotline had already been buzzing in the week since Ollie's murder, but once those sketches were out in the public eye, the calls just flooded in, overwhelming the lines. In those first few days, police received more than 400 leads. The whole community rallied together, focused on finding the killer, yet the tips yielded very little in the way of solid results. By July of 2002, Roger Kemp, along with his family, announced a reward for any information that would lead to the capture of the killer. The official hotline was offering a $1,000 reward for tips that would secure a conviction, but Roger Kemp felt this urgency to do more. Determined to generate fresh leads, he relentlessly raised funds, ultimately amassing a staggering $50,000. Roger Kemp was just tireless in his pursuit to keep his daughter's case alive in the public consciousness. He expressed that they didn't want to overlook anything, because even the smallest detail might be the crucial one. His plea to the public was clear. He asked people to please call in those leads. He said they just need to catch this guy, that they couldn't let him victimize anyone else. The search for justice quickly escalated into a national effort as the sketch was circulated among major news outlets all across the country. The Kansas State Police began receiving calls about possible suspects from every corner of the nation, but the leads, they all proved fruitless. The whereabouts of the suspect remained a complete mystery. By February of 2003, more than 8 months had passed since Ollie's murder. The killer continued to elude capture until a name resurfaced: James Strader. Roughly 3 to 4 months into the investigation, authorities had received an initial lead identifying James Strader, whose appearance closely matched the composite sketch. Now, James Strader was already wanted in Missouri and Kansas for a series of brutal rapes, and he was being looked at for Allie Kemp's murder in Leawood, Kansas. Not only did he resemble the suspect, but his history of violence against women made him a person of intense interest, especially after he fled from authorities. Law enforcement was anxious, to say the least, to bring him into custody for questioning in connection with Allie's murder, and to imprison this 3-time convicted felon for good. The breakthrough finally came when James Strader was apprehended during a routine traffic stop in a town in Utah. Finally, the suspect was in custody. The officer had instructed him to provide his driver's license and registration. It turned out James Strader had been pulled over in Richfield the night before after having skipped out on refueling in Salina. His arrest marked a pivotal moment in the investigation. In a startling turn of events, it was reported that a man had allegedly fled without paying for gas at a local station. Witnesses had observed the vehicle at the pump, and moments later, he just vanished into thin air. A concerned bystander promptly contacted the police, which prompted a swift response. And soon after, James Strader pulled into a service station in Richfield, only to find the Richfield police waiting for him. Detective Langer, who was eagerly anticipating this moment, hurried down to confront Strader directly. Accompanied by detectives from the sheriff's office, I made my way outside to witness the whole drama unfold. Upon speaking with Strader, he vehemently denied any involvement in the murder of Allie Kemp. Detective Langer had heard that kind of thing before, but his focus was singular. He needed Strader's DNA to move the investigation forward. So, without delay, Langer dispatched the DNA sample to the lab for testing. However, when the results came back, the news was nothing short of devastating. James Strader was not the killer. Shockwaves just rippled through the investigation team. Disbelief hung heavy in the air as Roger Kemp recounted the moment with utter astonishment. He said that everyone had been so certain of Strader's guilt. Roger reflected on the emotional roller coaster of the investigation, feeling as though he had reached both the highest and lowest points of his life. The depths of despair set in as the realization dawned that they had yet to capture the true perpetrator. Throughout the investigation, Roger was haunted by an overwhelming fear that the case would slip into cold case obscurity. He'd seen families who were devastated by similar tragedies, their loved ones lost to unsolved mysteries. The weight of his heartache was palpable. He felt as though his heart was already shattered. In homicide investigations, time becomes the enemy. Research indicates that if a murder case remains unresolved for over 6 months, the chances of it ever being solved diminish by nearly 50%. Each day that passed felt like a ticking clock, just worsening the likelihood of justice for Allie and her grieving family. Countless families are left in the dark, yearning for closure, much like the hundreds of thousands of unsolved murder cases spanning the globe. June 18th, 2003 marked 1 year since Allie's tragic murder, and Roger fought valiantly to maintain hope amidst the dwindling leads. Driving down the interstate one fateful day, Roger's gaze fell upon a billboard, a beacon of visibility. With thousands of eyes passing by, he suddenly had an idea. He thought, why not use this large canvas to help find the person responsible for his daughter's death? In that moment, he realized this was a pretty groundbreaking concept, one that had never really been attempted before in a case like his. Deep down, he was skeptical about its effectiveness, yet he knew that desperate times called for desperate measures. People often react to what they see, and sometimes that visual prompt is enough to inspire someone to finally make that crucial phone call, to say something like, we think you should look at this guy. The potential value of that insight was, incalculable. As Roger passed those billboards on the highway, a profound sadness would wash over him. The reality that Ali's killer remained at large loomed so heavily, and yet a flicker of hope emerged. Perhaps someone, somewhere, would remember something vital. The emotional weight of the situation was just palpable. As she drove past the billboards lining the highway, a deep sadness washed over her, too. The knowledge that the perpetrator was still out there was haunting, yet a flicker of hope remained that someone somewhere might see the billboard and remember. The hope was that it would spark a memory, that a passerby might recall seeing something crucial. Once the billboard was finally erected, tips began flooding in faster than ever before. It didn't take long for the police to receive a significant lead. Multiple callers reported a man named Ted Hoover, whose description aligned perfectly with the suspect. He drove an old tan pickup truck and he owned a pool company. One caller even provided the police with Hoover's address. Detective John Dickey approached the home, and he noted the maroon Ford pickup parked in the driveway. He knocked on the door, and Mr. Hoover answered. However, Hoover was evasive, saying he couldn't recall his whereabouts on the day of Ollie's homicide. Seeing the opportunity, Detective Dickey asked if Hoover would consent to provide a DNA sample. But Hoover hesitated, insisting that he needed to consult with his lawyer before making any decisions. That refusal raised a lot of red flags. In cases like this, a denial often speaks volumes. Determined to track him down, investigators scoured databases all across the country, but to no avail. Ted Hoover had seemingly vanished. Then a potential breakthrough arose. They discovered that Hoover might have a girlfriend in Connecticut. After reaching out to the local post office, the detectives confirmed that a male was residing at her address under the name Benjamin Appleby. This indicated that their suspect had likely changed his identity. So without delay, law enforcement in Connecticut was contacted, and they were instructed to place Benjamin Appleby under surveillance. As the investigation unfolded, authorities found that the name Teddy Hoover had been flagged in connection with several years-old warrants for indecent exposure, which suggested a link to the man they were pursuing. The Connecticut State Police acted swiftly, agreeing to arrest Appleby on the outstanding warrant. He was taken into custody at a modest home situated on a busy road in rural Litchfield County. And in a shocking twist, Appleby wasn't only wanted for indecent exposure, but also for risk of injury to a minor and for disorderly conduct. On November 8th, 2004, more than 2 years after the tragic murder of Allie Kemp, investigators finally had their suspect in custody. Yet, without a DNA sample, their case was still precarious. When he was confronted by detectives from Connecticut, Appleby expressed a reluctance to provide a DNA sample, asking them what would happen if he refused. The detectives simply assured him that they would acquire it, one way or another. So ultimately, under pressure, he consented, and the DNA was collected. But the urgent need for a confession outweighed the wait for any test results. As Benjamin Appleby entered the interrogation room, he was met by detectives from the Kansas State Police, who had meticulously staged the room to create an atmosphere of intimidation. A wall-sized poster displayed his image in the center, and it was surrounded by a web of evidence all designed to highlight his central role in their investigation. Upon taking a seat, Appleby's whole demeanor shifted. His eyes widened as he absorbed the overwhelming evidence displayed around him. In a moment of unexpected candor, he admitted that he had, kind of lied to them. The detectives, intrigued, pressed him for details. When he was confronted by the Connecticut detective, Benjamin Appleby was reluctant to provide DNA, questioning what the consequences would be if he refused. The detectives assured him they'd get it one way or another. Ultimately, he consented, and his DNA was collected. Yet investigators did not intend to wait for the test results. They craved a confession. When Benjamin Appleby entered the interrogation room, he was met with detectives from the Kansas State Police, who had set the stage to intimidate him. A wall-sized poster of his picture dominated the room. Surrounding it were various pieces of evidence, all connected with arrows, pointing back to him, illustrating why he was the prime suspect in their investigation. As he sat down, his eyes widened in realization. He scanned the room, fixated on the link chart with his image at the center. Breaking under the pressure, he confessed that, he kind of lied to them. Intrigued, the detectives probed further, asking him what he was talking about, what he had lied about. He answered, "Well, I was at that pool." Their psychological tactics were proving more effective than they could have anticipated. They urged him to elaborate, asking him to tell them what he remembered, what exactly happened that day. He began recounting that he went into the pool area with the intention of looking at the pool to, get some business. On that fateful day, June 18th, 2002, Ted Hoover, also known as Benjamin Appleby, drove into the parking lot of the Leawood local pool. From a distance, he spotted Allie Kemp and decided to approach her, confident that his pool company uniform would make him appear harmless. As Allie entered the pump room, Hoover seized the moment, believing he could make small talk without raising suspicion. He recalled hitting on her. He said he didn't remember exactly what he said, but that it was just casual conversation. With a calculated move, Hoover attempted to strike up a conversation, though the specifics of his words seemed to elude him. It was clear, however, that Allie showed no interest, and her instincts were kicking in as she began to sidestep him. As Ollie's wariness grew, she tried to navigate around him, but in a moment of desperation, he seized her, blocking her escape. In a horrifying account, Hoover recounted that he reached out a mere touch on her shoulder or hip, but Allie instinctively retaliated, pushing him back and delivering a punch. Enraged, he lost control, stripping her of her clothes with a twisted intent. His assault escalated as he struck her repeatedly, confessing that he didn't remember how many blows he delivered. Each hit resonated with a chilling finality, his actions spiraling out of control as the interrogation progressed. Detective John Dickey confronted him with stark clarity, asking him directly, "You killed her, didn't you?" In a moment that sends shivers down your spine, Hoover admitted that yes, he did. He revealed the brutal truth that Allie had been strangled. Haunted by the act, Hoover confessed that he didn't even recall the weapon he had used, nor the reason behind his heinous act. After Allie slipped into unconsciousness, he callously covered her body with a nearby blue tarp, leaving her lifeless form behind as if it were nothing. His chilling admission echoed in the ears of those who heard it. They were convinced they had finally captured the monster who had taken Ali Kemp away from them. Determined to ensure he wouldn't evade justice again, Ted Hoover faced trial in November of 2005 for the rape and first-degree murder of Ali Kemp. On December 5th, after a mere 2 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered a verdict that brought a collective sigh of relief. The foreman announced that the jury found the defendant guilty. The word guilty reverberated a long-awaited moment for Ali Kemp's friends and family, who had suffered so much since her tragic death. It was her father, Roger Kemp, who had discovered her brutalized body at the neighborhood pool where she worked that summer of 2002. Justice had finally been served. Though the pain of his loss would never fade, Roger Kemp found solace in knowing that Ted Hoover, now known as Benjamin Appleby, would spend 50 years to life in prison, barred from ever returning to the streets. In the wake of his daughter's tragic death, Roger had become a relentless advocate, embodying the spirit of every father who fears for their child's safety. He refused to let Ali's death be in vain. Driven by a mission to protect others, Roger and his wife initiated a self-defense program for young girls, naming it the Ali Kemp Educational Foundation. Their first class, held in the basement of a city hall, saw 12 participants eager to learn. Since then, an astonishing 68,000 individuals have passed through their doors, with countless women reaching out to express their gratitude, telling him his program saved their lives. For Roger, though, it was never just about the numbers. He felt that even saving a single life made all of his efforts worthwhile. Beyond the self-defense classes, Roger Kemp collaborated with law enforcement on a nationwide billboard campaign, shining a light on the faces of wanted criminals and bringing hope to the families of long-forgotten victims. His tireless work offered a glimmer of hope, ensuring that the stories of those lost would not simply fade into obscurity. Roger Kemp continued his fight, unwavering in his commitment to protect future generations from the tragedies that had shattered his own. In a world rife with tragedy, few stories resonate as deeply as that of Roger Kemp. Invited to the White House by the President of the United States, Roger found himself honored in a ceremony that recognized his relentless pursuit of justice. Yet, this accolade came against the backdrop of his worst nightmare, the murder of his beloved daughter, Ali. Bound by immeasurable pain and grief, Roger channeled his heartache into a mission to forge a safer future for generations to come. His foundation emerged as a beacon of hope, offering women of all ages vital self-defense training, empowering them to reclaim their sense of security. Through his innovative billboard campaign, which displayed the faces of wanted criminals, Roger's efforts have led to numerous arrests, including the pivotal conviction of Ali's murderer. In recognition of his unwavering commitment, the United States has honored Roger Kemp, a man transformed by tragedy into a champion for change. Roger reflected, his voice heavy with emotion, that this certainly wasn't the way they wanted Ali to make a difference in the world. But he said he's very, very proud of her. With a heart filled with hope, he added that he hopes she would appreciate what they're doing. He hopes she'd be proud, but he believes she would be. While they could not save Ali, Roger and his foundation have undoubtedly saved countless women, ensuring that Ali's legacy continues to shine brightly in the lives they touch.